Get started. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second Community Land Trust workshop for 2022. My name is Yarrow Brown, and I am the Executive Director of Housing North. We're bringing this workshop to you today as it's a huge topic of conversation in our housing arena, but we also wanted to dive in deeper to a few types of projects that Community Land Trusts in our region are working on and help to inspire you and then talk about this tool and why it is so important. We have 4 people here to speak with you today. Denny, so I just want to have Denny give a wave. He is going to be our moderator, and he is the retired CEO for Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids, which is a nonprofit housing corporation. He's going to help moderate and introduce some of our speakers and then help with questions at the end. We also have Stephanie McGreevy. Stephanie, you could give a wave, and Maria Syke. They are from the Mackinac Island Housing Corporation, which is also connected to the Mackinac Island Community Foundation. So thank you for being here today. They are going to be our first speakers. And then we have David DeVelder, who is the Community Land Trust Director of Dwelling Place, which covers, I believe, 15 counties, and he will share more about that. So I just want to thank all of our speakers and thank you for being here today. We are going to save most of the questions and answers for the end, but if you do have a question in between our speakers, feel free to put that in the chat. When we do get to questions at the end, we just ask that you raise your hand so that we can call on you. And because we do have limited bandwidth with some of our internet space in rural Michigan here, just please keep off your camera if you can, if you're not speaking, and mute so we can get into the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Denny. And again, just thank you all for being here. I will kind of disappear into the background, but we'll be here to answer any questions. So Denny, welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Yarrow. And I'm glad to be here. This is the second, as she mentioned, the second workshop. The first one was more of a generic one. A number of people requested to see and hear from some folks who are actually doing this a little bit. So we've got kind of contrast here. If anybody thinks that community land trust is something you start and then it just goes, I think you'll hear from folks here and realize that it's very complicated. It's not easy for any organization, no matter how long you've been doing this or how big you are or small you are, that it's a complicated process. And I think you'll also hear from folks that they're all different. There isn't a one size fits all for CLTs. They come in various sizes, shapes, forms, and their structures can be very different as well in trying to put together. The bottom line really is that about CLTs is trying to create an opportunity for wealth building for families and households that might not otherwise have an opportunity to become homeowners and to build wealth as opposed to renting. And it's also an important vehicle through which communities can help to create permanently affordable homeownership models in their community that will be around for many, many years to come. In keeping the housing prices affordable, especially for those that the workforce housing groups and stuff. And in northern Michigan, the resort communities are particularly affected, but all areas of rural Michigan and even urban areas too in Michigan are affected by what's going on in the housing situation. So I've been retired now for 9 months from Dwelling Place, but I am volunteering a lot of time still in my retirement to kind of promote housing issues and housing groups and being involved in that way, shape, or form, in addition to having more time for myself. So anyway, I welcome you all here. And without further ado, we get started by introducing our first presentation, which is going to be from Stephanie, let me get this right, Stephanie McGreevy, who is the board secretary for the Mackinac Island Housing Corporation. And with her today is Maria Syke, who is the Community Land Trust Administrator for the Mackinac Island Housing Commission. So they'll be making their presentation. As Yarrow indicated, if you have some questions you'd like to ask them specifically, you can put those in the chat. You can save them for the end too, because we will be providing a little bit of time right at the end for more generic questions. And if you all run out of questions, we may have a few questions to ask the presenters as well. So Stephanie, the show is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that introduction. I am going to go ahead and share my screen if I can get that back up and running, and so that we can not only tell you about what our community land trust is, but also share some pictures as we go through as well. Can you see that okay? Oh, that's the end, so that won't help us at all. Let's go all the way to the beginning. And there. All right. Again, I am Stephanie. I am the board secretary, and Maria Syke is the administrator. But an important job title is that we also work for Mackinac Island Community Foundation. I'm the executive director here, and Maria is the administrative assistant plus marketing administrator. So we have dual roles in our community, and an important part of that is that that the Community Foundation has recognized that we are a tiny island with a big problem, as many other organizations or many other communities along the state have seen. And in 1997, a group of concerned citizens and an attorney and a group made up of clergy, mayor, and council people organized in order to search for a housing solution on Mackinac Island. I know some of you have seen my other presentation, but it's still important to note that inflated real estate prices prevented the majority of the 500 year-round residents from purchasing a home. Many of these homes were used as some seasonal summer cottages, and single-family homes were often converted into employee housing for growing island businesses. This small home in front of you housed 3 year-round families and now is used for summer employees and is shut down throughout the winter months. So we ask ourselves, and in many of these communities, we say our population has stayed the same, but where has our housing gone? And single family homes have been converted into seasonal employee housing, as the house on the left, and the houses on the right. There had been 2 small homes like the house on the right, and the house on the left was purchased, demolished, and created a seasonal summer home, which again is empty. Both houses sit empty now in the winter months. So as that group looked around, one of the things that they saw that Mackinac Island could benefit from was a community land trust. Again, and that was in 1997. After recognizing that community land trust, they looked for land and they purchased a 2-acre plot of land in Harrisonville, which we'll show you a picture of where that is in a moment. Right after that, the Housing Corporation began work in 1999 with Mark McDaniels of the Michigan Capital Fund, and they worked with MISHA. And their first home was a duplex and 2 single-family homes. They contracted with MISHA in order to get a land grant to start those homes in this community land trust. As all of you know, leasees own their home, but they lease the land from the Housing Corporation. And that leasing fee was $15, and continues to be $15 a month, and then they secure their own mortgages. Location. As you can see at the very bottom of the map is Halleman Bay, which is where you come in with Shuckler's and Starline Boat Line, and the downtown area you can see. But as you go up the main road, which is Cadott Avenue, you see a Grand Hotel, and then you start to see, you go up, and this is called Harrisonville, and this is where many of the island residents live. And at the top of it, right in here, is Edgewood. It's across the street from Grand Hotel Employee Housing, and it's bordered by state land, taxi stables, other employee housing, and many islander year-round homes. The original Edgewood site plan was platted on 2 acres of land and is 26 units or lots. The lot sizes are small, and the building envelopes are 25 by 50. So you can see each of the units, and then on each unit is a square, and that is your building envelope. And that is where the homes can sit in order to have the appropriate space around each home, between each home, and then also for your easement for public utilities. In this particular plan, there had been the plats established multiple duplexes. And in this corner, in the top corner, units 6 and 7 are a duplex. And at the bottom, unit 13 and 14 are also a duplex that are available too. But in fact, that was not what happened. The plan changed a bit. And this is the site plan that's being used currently. And that is that, and you can see units 1 at the top is being used. In the interior, we have 2, notice there are different shapes for units 3 and 8. And they have owner-built homes that encroached over the building envelope, and they did have to get special permission to go over that. This plan was drawn in 2003, but interesting enough, was never officially recorded.
The difference between the corner lots.
And you'll notice that there are at the bottom right, units 13 and 14. Again, it's not a duplex, it is 2 single family units. And then again, at the very top, units 6 and 7, that was to be a duplex and then ended up turning into 2 single family lots. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Edgewood grew in the early 2000s. So after phase 1 was built, the Housing Corporation began phase 2, which was to build a second duplex and 2 more single family homes. You, in the picture on the top, the first duplex is there on the right, and then just past it is the second duplex. And in 2002, a single family home was built by a resident who built it themselves. So with MSHDA's land grants, 8 homes were eventually built in Edgewood, and 1 home was built by the homeowner. Unfortunately, the momentum slowed. Mackinac Island was not immune to the mortgage crisis. 3 homes faced foreclosure, but with the help with the land trust worked with the homeowners and with the bank and transferred the mortgages over to new qualified residents. Interesting enough, CLT resale formula was not used, as just the mortgages were transferred to the new homeowners. At that time, Michigan Capital Fund ceased to work with the Housing Corporation, and in fact had suggested that they find a construction manager and a resident manager for this facility. But unfortunately, some of the board members also left the island. And at that point in time, except for a secretary that paid the bills, the organization went dormant. But in 2015, Mackinac Island Community Foundation recognized that housing was a major problem on Mackinac Island. So first, working with the city of Mackinac Island, they established 12 units of rental. And at that same time, started to speak to those members that had been members of the community that had been on this board. And they also reached out to, in November of 2017, Mark McDaniels, who had been a part of the Michigan Capital Fund previously, and now had Sinair. And work began with also with Mark Erickson to relaunch the development. One of the major changes was that the project had been low income housing. And the first thing that had to change was it had to become moderate income housing, as the low income numbers that would have been established would not work for this community any longer. So in 2020, the Housing Corporation reincorporated and began work on the next phase of homes.
So that brings us up to the present day and the new plan for Edgewood going forward. So right now there's a total of 9 homes, like we said before. One was built by the owner, the other 8 were built with Michelle money. They were built in Edgewood, and to build, all the applicants have to meet the following qualifications, which are typical of a community land trust. There are restrictions to moving in. You have to live on Mackinac Island 11 months out of the year. You have to be employed on Mackinac Island as of the date of the lease signing. And your household income must not exceed 250% of the median for Mackinac County. And right now that number is about 117,000. So that is the income cap for if you want to move into Edgewood. You also can't own property at the island anytime during a 3-year period before you sign your lease. Also important to remember is that homeowners have to sell their homes using the resale formula on the next slide. So again, the resale formula is an important aspect of the CLT. The resale formula that the Housing Corporation had come up with was needlessly complicated. It was confusing to both the board and also some of our consultants and our attorney. So we went and looked at resale formulas for other organizations similar to ours and came up with something that is simpler and also allows the seller to retain equity, but also keeps the home affordable for future buyers. So our formula price shall be equal to the lessee's purchase price of the home plus 22% of their increase in market value of their improvements. And that's a number that's determined by the appraiser. So you add the 22% of that increase in market value to the purchase price to get the formula price that the home will sell for. So is contracting with Oakwood Construction and ASL Architects out of East Lansing. They were already present on the island because they were working on some housing for the city. So when they approached us this past summer, we knew that it was probably going to be the only opportunity to build the homes in the time frame that we wanted. So we contracted with them to build 4 new 2-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family units, and the renderings of those are on the right. They are similar floor plan, just slightly different facades in front of the home. So for these houses, we have, we have 2 approved applicants overall. One of them is building his own home. Another will move into one of our homes that we have shown here. We are also working with the USDA, the Rural Development Single Family Home Loan Program that they have, which allows applicants to pay 0% down. And we've been working extensively with them to help our applicants obtain mortgages. So if they can't obtain a traditional mortgage, they can go through the USDA if they meet the USDA's income requirements. So that's been helpful. The Community Foundation also helped. They granted the Housing Corporation partial funding to pay for utility hookups to the new homes. And during this past fall, we've also worked on cultivating a stronger relationship with our local bank, which is First National of San Ignace. With CLTs, lenders are often unfamiliar with the concept of CLTs, or they're just inexperienced with them. Maybe they don't have one in their community. So it's really important that you establish a relationship with your bank, preferably a local bank, so that you can work closely with them and continue to bring them up to speed on what a CLT is and how it works. Because of the leased land, they're not super enthused to give financing. So after we worked closely with them, we were able to get approved for a construction loan for $1 million in this past fall, 2021. Our architect also designed us these 1,048 square foot home plans, the renderings that you saw, that fit within this tiny building envelope of 25 by 50, while complying at the same time with city ordinances. And then we broke ground on the new phase of homes in November of 2021. And like I just said, designing the homes was a little bit of a challenge because of the small envelope, while also having to fit in the requirements that we needed. For example, we know that Mackinac Islanders want a large mudroom for their snowmobile gear and possibly a freezer for storing food over the long winter. And we want that room to be especially large, but we had to have a specific size of a landing for the second entryway there. So we had to push that into the mudroom a little bit to fit all of the structures within this tiny building envelope. So there are a few challenges, but we came up with a plan that we liked. So we continued construction through the winter. These here on the left are our homes. The prices of the home are $250,000 currently, and our target completion date is May 31st, so that the homeowners can move in hopefully this summer. These homes are phase 1 of our long-term plan to build up to 16 more units at Edgewood. And our next phase of homes, depending on our needs, could be duplexes with 3 bedrooms. And the homeowners are eager to move in.
Absolutely. So while we feel very successful that we've gotten the community land trust back up and running and that we have started, we thought it was very important to, right from the get-go, let you know what some of our challenges have been. Our first challenge is that this is a very small building envelope, and it is very strict in our housing that all of the building had to be within that 25 by 50 building envelope. That had been definitely something that we had run across. The second thing is the material costs. They have literally been changing right in front of our eyes. We have had a major, from the day that we had gotten our costs to some things have gone up 30–40%. So we've had to grab from other spots as needed. And we knew this going into it. Getting equipment and materials to the island has been a challenge. And we had a very early winter as our boats stopped in January, and they still are not running. So again, that has been a challenge we were not anticipating. Well, actually, we anticipated, but the builder didn't. And then also finding qualified applicants. We know that there's a middle ground, and we continue to search for that middle ground of what those applicants look like. The USDA, while a challenge, has also been very a good relationship, and they have worked with us in order to edit the ground lease and worked extensively with us, and we're very excited about that. And the ground lease, we had our original ground lease, which was from 2000, and Fannie Mae and USDA had looked at it, and it looks very different, which had from the 2011, and it just looked different, but it had all of the main ideas in it. So we didn't have to make too many changes, just one simple change. And some of the great things, not so much a challenge, but one of the groups that we've worked with that has been wonderful is Grounded Solutions, the national organization for CLTs. They really worked with us to make sure that we were up to snuff in our documents. Also, we found that it was extremely important to have outside consultants. We would have never gotten this back up and running if not for Sinair and Mark Erickson, their attorney, who worked extensively to update our lease in order to make sure that we'd be able to sell these homes in the near future. And I think the one thing, Maria and I both work full-time for the for the Community Foundation. And I think that a dedicated staff member and a construction manager in the future will be something that could be their challenge, but hopefully in the end is a real plus for them. But at the end of the day, we do this, and as we said in the very beginning, because we're doing this to sustain our community. This is a part of the strategic plan for the Community Foundation and for our community. And as this is the workforce, this is the infrastructure of this island, are the people that live here. So that is an important part of this.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and Maria for the presentation. I see it is 2:25, and I want to make sure we got time for David and questions. There was one question in the chat box. I think I saw one, maybe there's two. Yeah, there was the question, somebody said they echo the same question from Barb Conley. So let's get to that question right now in just a few, be brief as you can about it. But it says 250,000 seems to be a high for workforce housing. Is that realistic on Mackinac Island? I don't know which one of you want to take that on.
Well, you're not going to find anything for less than 500,000 on Mackinac Island now. There's just nothing. And so, yes, is it realistic? That was the best we could do. Our original plan had been at 185 2 years ago. That's how much building costs have changed in less than 2 years. So when we originally, and by far, we were not happy about it, but at the same time, it's also, we've expressed this to employers that we're actually kind of with our, I guess, with our restrictions, if you have 2 teachers, they over qualify, and then for some they under qualify. So we are having to look at this, and we may readjust on the fly in order to ensure that we are working this. But if someone were to buy one of the houses that were originally built, they would qualify easily, because those are going to be less than $125,000. So these are going to be double. So now we may just need to look at how we're going to change those restrictions in order to change this model.
Yeah, we have to figure out what affordability and accessibility means for Mackinac Island, and that might be something different than everywhere else. We just have to tailor it specifically to our community.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that response, and I think it just underlines the fact that there are a lot of components that go into building homes for community land trusts. You know, whether you acquire, build new homes, the cost to build a home is the cost to build a home, and if you are going to sell it for less than the cost of actually build it, you'll need some form of subsidy to be able to bring that cost down for the buyer. But the important thing to keep in mind is if you put a subsidy in, that subsidy stays with the CLT because the sale price, in their case, the resale price is based on what they paid for it, not what it costs to build it. So if there was such a thing, this is where capital subsidies become really, really important to community land trusts. And they're all structured differently. The price points are different. Affordability restrictions can be different. And to go into a little bit different scenario, we've got David DeVelder here from Dwelling Places. I said I was there for 30 some years. A huge supporter of trying to get something off the ground. Unfortunately, I had to retire before I was able to see it come completely to fruition. But David's in the process of a 2-piece CLT in a larger organization where the CLT is attached to the larger organization Dwelling Place, and looking at rental conversions, converting rental units into CLT units as well as new construction. So to turn it over to David to make his presentation. And David, I'll try to keep you, it's 2:29. Leave about 10 minutes at the end, maybe 20 minutes, 10 minutes at the end. So you've got about 20 minutes or so for your, and then we'll see what other questions come from your presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Denny. Well, it's great to be here again. Just really thankful for Housing North for all these presentations, the workshops that we've done, and I see some familiar faces, some returning folks from other presentations that we've done, and Jane McKenzie, I think, is in the audience, and I guess I just want to recognize her that she's been at this a long time, so we certainly don't want to speak as though we're by any means experts in CLTs, but I also want to recognize Denny's work. None of this would probably have gotten to this point without his hard work and some others from the community. In the nonprofit community, which I was a part of you know, the last 20 years. So it's exciting to be sharing and just trying to make momentum in this. You know, yeah, it is fairly complex, the community land trust conversation, and try to advance community land trust in Michigan. So just a little bit about Dwelling Place. It's about 42 years old, and really the cornerstone of Dwelling Place is catalyst for revitalization. We have an extensive support services department that works with our residents. We also have a community building engagement department that's handles a lot of our volunteer engagement and both in our communities and into the general community, connects our residents to resident services and to just ways to improve their life and their situation, their financial and employment situation. We have a lot of murals and art, a lot of community gardens. The CLT was about 20 years in the making. Before I came on staff, Denny and others hired Michael Brown. I think we had our first meeting with Michael Brown in the early 2000s. I remember sitting in meetings and he was just a great guy, super supportive. And I worked with him and others at Dwelling Place to try to take information he had and make it into something that was going to work for Dwelling Place. And it was a lot of work, but I think we've made a lot of progress. It is a 501c3 now, and the land trust has received about $850,000 in grants to date. So, which has been just really important because it has taken significantly longer to sell homes and condominiums than we could have ever imagined. So we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So our current board of directors is the traditional makeup of a lot of land trusts, where we have the 1/3 sponsoring entity, which in this case is Dwelling Place, 1/3 people from the community, and then 1/3 homeowners. We don't have any homeowners yet, but we hope to real soon here later this year. So, and our board members have been just phenomenal. We have a diverse makeup of folks from some of our surrounding communities and from Central Grand Rapids, and realtors, builders, finance experts, former mayors, and so public fund or foundation folks. So it's been great to have them participating and volunteering and helping us launch this. So just as far as real estate values and this increasing gap, just in the last 4 years, our median home price, 2018, 150,000. I was actually surprised it was that low. I thought it was higher than that. Fast forward 4 years later, we're at 280,000. I think it seems to go up every month. I was trying to do this research, and I actually have been seeing more like 300 to 350,000, but 280 is the median price, which is a little bit lower than the average price. So as far as some of our projects, I think for sake of this presentation, we really wanted to focus more on the rental conversions, which is something that isn't done very often and is really something that was important for Dwelling Place to take on because of the large portfolio that Dwelling Place owns and manages. And to have an asset that we could turn into CLT homeownership, I think was really the dream of Dwelling Place for many years. And it's been exciting just to engage with residents. And we have 3 developments that are in the conversion process. New Hope Homes, which has not undergone the condo process yet. We did get 1 mortgage approved buyer to date, which was exciting to have that happen. And she has not decided to purchase her own unit, so we have not engaged the condominium process yet, but she actually bid on one of our Granville Homes, which applied for that home, actually did not get it through our selection process, so she's sitting tight. And then Martino Apartments, we have vacant condominiums that we've been selling. We've been approaching our renters. I've had a couple of residents that are approved to purchase, but that has been stalled due to mortgage funding issues, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then Granville Homes has had probably the most success in the rental conversion process, where we've had a current renter that's probably closing next week. We had 2 vacant homes that became vacant. We actually had a resident in one of the homes get mortgage approved and applied for one of the vacant homes. So she's in the process of purchasing that home, and then her home will be marketed on to our waiting list. So as far as the makeup of how things work in these, we sell to renters at 50 to 75% of its value. It's a little bit of a typo. It's 50% at one of the developments, but it's typically 75% of value. Any vacant units are sold at 75%. And then our sale prices are fairly affordable compared to what's happening in Grand Rapids through the land trust model, 75 to 130,000, which is really exciting. And then any current renters automatically have the option to purchase, or they can continue renting. Our renters have to go through home buyer counseling and get pre-approved for a mortgage in order to purchase. Vacant units are, marketed to qualified buyers on our waiting list who can apply to purchase those. We have had to work with Mishta, who does have had given grants to these developments to try to work with them on raising the regulatory limit on who we could sell to. Some of the homes are only to be sold to folks making up to 60% of the median income. And then in other cases, we can sell in our condos, we can sell up to 80 or 110, depending on the unit. A lot of that comes down to what type of funding was in each development or in each unit, because it's really specific to the actual unit itself. So, and we also have quite a few residents with Section 8 vouchers. We're actually working with a resident right now who has a voucher and who's approved to purchase. And so we're working with our local housing commission to get that voucher converted so that she can close through dwelling place CLT. So hopefully that'll go smoothly. And then just as far as what we're seeing, I think we also would say construction costs have been really a challenge, both in the renovations and in some of the new construction projects that we're looking to do in the future. Scopes have changed. I would say we probably spent more money than we wanted to do a good job on the renovations, and it ended up costing quite a bit because of costs going up. So we have had to do a better job of limiting upgrades and limiting what we can do as far as rehabbing the homes, while still making sure that they're a good opportunity for someone to purchase, making sure the mechanicals are up to date. We also spend extra money on the exterior to make sure it's durable. But buyers have really wanted additional things, and we've had to limit that somewhat. As far as sales, we have specific purchase documents that has caused some delays as far as getting through the closing process, because our documents are specific, and it just takes a little bit longer to get those executed and get those circulated, and then to work with our attorneys who represent both dwelling place and our buyers, and all that exchange takes a little bit more time. We switched to our home inspection process with our buyers to a go or no go, as opposed to having them do their inspection, ask for all kinds of repairs. Because we're doing a really good job on the renovation, we went to more of a no go, just saying, as is, this is the home. Certainly want you to inspect the home, but unless it's something that had to do with what the contractor did to renovate the house, we're not going to be able to fix everything that a buyer wants. It bogs the closing process down quite a bit. But we, of course, want to make sure the home is mechanically sound and safe. Appraisals have been really all over the place with the CLT. And so we have tried to work through that. Fannie Mae has quite a bit different appraisal process for CLTs than Freddie Mac. We're finding that Freddie Mac is a little bit easier to work with as far as the loan to value calculations. And operationally, we are planning, we do, in any closing we have, we put money into reserves so that we have a backstop of money that we can both use to renovate homes in the future if they come, if they're purchased back by dwelling place, or if God forbid a foreclosure happens, we can purchase that home back, do the necessary renovations. Dwelling place is very blessed to have a lot of staff to leverage in this process. I'm full-time with the land trust, but I rely on a lot of staff within dwelling place for marketing, and we do a lot of engagement with our renters. We have a lot of existing renters within the larger dwelling place communities that have applied to become CLT homeowners. So a lot of connecting points with the staff, which is really helpful. We've started to do financial education in some of our rental properties to do more outreach with both our renters. We do outsource all our home buyer counseling, that is our HUD certified counseling, and our income verification to determine if they're income qualified. We outsource that all to other providers like Habitat Michigan or a few nonprofits here in Grand Rapids. But that's an intentional decision dwelling place made to do some outreach internally, but to focus a lot of our, to not reinvent the wheel and focus more of our work on the CLT, developing properties and outsourcing that to agencies that are experts in that. I have found the networking for CLTs around the nation and in Michigan just to be super helpful. We spent a lot of time with City Lakes Community Land Trust in Minneapolis, and they were just wonderful to work with. We're also working on a couple of tax relief bills, which we can share with any of you if you're interested, on how to get property taxes lower for community land trust, because the land in a community land trust is taxed at a non-principal residency amount. So the taxes end up being higher in CLTs, which is not helpful. So hopefully those bills will make progress through the Senate and House here soon this year. And then as far as some of the challenges, we have had ongoing communications with MISTA about regulatory restrictions that they placed on the developments as we've gone through the conversion process, which has been time consuming. We've had to have attorneys involved in that to help us through that. And we are making progress, but it's been slower than we would have expected. The other thing that was really a challenge was working with our renters that are in the 45 units that are being converted. The annual household income, median household income for those 45 units is about $20,000 a year, about 35% AMI. So it is a very limited income buying pool. And so that has meant that it just takes longer to work with folks to get them to that point where they can have everything in line to be pre-approved for a mortgage. It is happening, but it is a time-consuming process, and we just celebrate every family that gets a mortgage pre-approval. It might mean that they hopefully would buy through dwelling place, or they could buy in another nonprofit through another CLT here in Grand Rapids, or in some cases with some of our buyers that are on our waiting list, we'll still try to purchase on the open market. And then deeper sales discounts. We have had to go lower and lower on the discount to meet the income of the buyer to help them purchase. And we already talked a little bit about lenders and appraisals being a lot different depending on, we have in Granville Homes, they're all the same house, but their appraisals come back quite a bit different depending on whether it's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Single family is preferred over condo, much simpler, much easier. And then with condos, the big challenge is we've been finding that Fannie and Freddie do want to see 50% of the condos sold before they will back those mortgages. So we're really talking more about our portfolio. We're portfolio product with a bank, or Mishta has also shown interest in providing mortgages, but we have not finalized that yet. And then as far as the funding tools that we're all working hard to put into our land trust developments on the new construction side, mainly brownfield TIF, new markets tax credits, home. We applied for home funds through the local city of Grand Rapids, and so they're I think I'm really hopeful we're going to get funding from them for our 28 Union project, and they will need to do an amendment with HUD in order to provide funding for our CLT homes. AHP Federal Home Loan Bank, we will be applying for. We have a housing trust fund in Grand Rapids that we're hoping will be able to provide some funding here in the next year. Philanthropy, Spectrum Health has been a huge contributor to the CLT. Very thankful for that. Doing mixed income housing by introducing market rate housing within our CLT developments is something that we're exploring. And then just having rental conversion property that dwelling place provided, I think, is a great avenue for expanding CLTs. And then just some of the benefits that we've been really trying to educate both the community and our buyers. We only require $500 down payment. In most cases, there is no PMI in our sales. The community representation, with the fact that home buyers serve on the board, I think is something we're really looking forward to seeing that round out our board and have that voice be heard. Reaching lower income buyers, the permanent affordability with Grand Rapids real estate, at least currently what's happening in Grand Rapids is just astounding, the amount of offers that are being placed on properties and the offer deadlines and such. Foreclosure mitigation, housing innovation, we're looking at accessibility and green building to incorporate into our new construction. As far as some of a couple of the big projects that we're optimistic about, South Haven, we're partnering with Habitat Company out of Chicago to do 26 townhouses. It's a joint LIHTC and CLT development, and Habitat is applying for LIHTC in this current round and is actually putting the CLT within the application so that we can try to get some more points. And then 28 Union is 42 single family homes, 2 3-bedrooms, and assuming all goes well with funding, we could start that this year. Both of those projects have all the public, most of the public approvals. There's a couple of little odds and ends. This is a site plan for 28 Union. And we're really excited about this project. A lot of work with the city of Grand Rapids. All the streets are public. Average sales price of $170. We're starting to see some of the comparables in this neighborhood just skyrocket. I think when I first started valuing this neighborhood, we were in about the $200,000 range, and we're fully expecting that homes in this neighborhood, the existing homes are going to be in the $300,000 to $400,000 range as far as some of the sales of existing homes in this particular neighborhood. And it's very possible that some market rate homes may be included in this development to balance the funding. So this is what the current site plan looks like, where we just have one final step with the city of Grand Rapids to go through final site plan review. They wanted to see what the houses were going to look like and how everything was going to lay out. These are very narrow lots. Some of the lots are about 34 feet wide at the narrowest. The house itself is anywhere from 22 to 26 feet wide, so they are pretty narrow. And it does have a courtyard, and we played around with a lot of different designs with the courtyard, but we're excited about that. And then this is an open space. We went through quite a bit of, I think we had 10 or 12 community meetings with the neighborhood, and the neighborhood really wanted to see some open space. So we preserved about an acre for gathering space and maybe we'll have some gardens in there and stuff. So that's exciting. And this is just a list of what our buyers go through, where they attend an orientation that I typically give. We also have community partners in Grand Rapids that also give these orientations in Spanish. We have a home buyer packet that we provide to our buyers when they enter the process. Then they go through home buyer education and get referred to a lender, get placed on a waiting list. I think we have about 250 people on our waiting list currently. So yeah, a lot of folks are desiring CLT home ownership. So, and just provide an example on what an average house payment might be for our CLT. In some cases, we have payments down in the $800 range, and some will be higher than this example. We do charge either a condo fee if it's a site condo or a traditional condo, or a $50 repair fee, one or the other. And that $50 for the repair goes into an account that they can use to help maintain their home. And then just provide an example about, and we'll send out the slideshow. This is an example of that we provide to our buyers to show them what resales look like in CLTs and how they become more affordable over time. And our education and lending partners that have been partnering with us. We've had really good work from Huntington and Mercantile with multiple pre-approvals for our buyers. Land Home Financial Services is a national CLT lender, and the closing that we have next week is through them. So those three have been very active. And then ICCF and Habitat Michigan have been doing most of our home buyer education and income verification. Just want to recognize a lot of partners in this effort to make this all happen. And with that, I will turn it back over to Denny.
Thank you, David. And it's exciting for me because actually this is the first time I've seen this particular presentation to know how much progress is being made since I left. So thank you for all of that. I learned a lot just from watching this. I saw a couple, we're getting 6:53. I got 7 minutes left. We're going to start to stick to our time here because you will be able to, if you have questions that come afterwards that don't get answered, Yarrow will be able to find a way for you to be able to get answers to those questions by putting them in the chat. But I did see in the chat, I just lost the chat. There it is. Okay, I saw a question. I can't pull it up right now. Yarrow, can you repeat the chat questions? I can't find them now.
Yeah, definitely. And Denny, we can go a little, I scheduled this for an hour and a half, so we have a little time.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so basically the one question is about the CLT legislation, and I told Betsy I would put those in the, I'm sorry, not Betsy, Catherine, that I would put those in our follow-up email with links to the registry or the legislation numbers. And then the other one is, do you try to incorporate open and green space in the project? So that might be for David.
Yeah, I think David showed that in the one presentation, but go ahead, David.
Yeah, and that was just because, and I think this happened a little bit in South Haven as well. Our partner, our LIHTC partner, did a lot of the site planning and engagement process earlier on before we were involved, but the community was really wanting more open space because of the increased density with, with these developments, whether it's a LIHTC or a CLT. We do have to build as much as possible in a dense manner, just to make sure that we're providing as many houses in a development. It's very time consuming, very expensive. And we're actually really thankful for the neighborhood in Grand Rapids that pushed us to create more open space. And so having, over an acre of land where folks can gather, and there's a lot of trees that will be preserved, really is helpful, even though there are some other parks nearby, and we were kind of relying on that, but that wasn't good enough. We had to provide more green space. And so I think, and maybe Denny, you could talk about this at Dwelling Place. I think Dwelling Place does a fabulous job in a lot of their developments in open space, parks, gardens, play areas. And we're certainly trying to do the same in the CLT.
Yeah, that became a big part of the organization's focus in the last 15, 20 years, was trying to recognize that people don't just live in homes. They live in neighborhoods, they live in communities. And to that end, Dwelling Place has actually gotten involved in public parks. It's a placemaking initiatives, grants from from different places to create sculpture, artwork, community gardening. Dwelling Place is a huge community gardening program too. But I want to go back to a couple things that I saw in David's presentation, and maybe they surprised everybody a little bit, but I wanted just to clarify what that was. When he talked about how low the sale prices were, obviously the cost to build those homes, especially the rental conversions, happened 25 years ago. 20 years ago, there were LIHTC deals. And I think I heard Stephanie talk about that too, is that the homes that got built 20 years ago don't have to be $250,000 sale prices. And that's same in rental conversions as well. All the equity that came in 20 years ago from low-income housing credits, historic credits, whatever it was, home funds, it's still there. And so it was really up to Dwelling Place to decide, do we want to use that equity that was there, spend some money to repair and renovate the buildings so that they're up to par, they're caught back up to where they should be for sale, for home ownership, but reduce the sale price because we got that equity sitting there, and so that's one of the advantages of doing something with, and one of the reasons they say that CLTs actually become more affordable over time is because the cost to build it is always going to be the highest on the day you build the house, not 10 years from now or 15 years from now with inflation. So that's true in rental. It's also true in new construction on there. And that's the reason I think Dwelling Place, I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but they say, how do you get that lower price? You get it because there's either been a capital subsidy, like in the case of the Burton Street project that David just mentioned. Spectrum Health actually provided Dwelling Place with a $600,000 grant, which can be used, some of it can be used for capital subsidy or down payment assistance for buyers. So capital subsidies become important, which is why if you were at the last workshop, you would have seen some conversation about brownfield TIF to try to create a form of capital subsidy that can be used for new construction to help get things going. But if you have a LIHTC owner or provider who in your community, or you happen to be one yourself, that has a property that's 15 or 20 years old, and there's some opportunities there maybe for the rental conversion side. Are there other questions that anyone has that they would like to share? If not, on the chat, would you like to, do you have any questions you'd like to just come on, unmute and ask a question of either David or Stephanie or Maria?
I don't see any other questions in the chat, Denny, to be answered.
Okay, then I guess we'll see if there's any closing comments that Stephanie or Maria want to make. And then David, is there any closing comments you'd like to make? Stephanie and Maria?
Like David, we just want to ensure that everyone recognizes what a wonderful networking Michigan has. I know you had thanked, David had thanked Jane McKenzie, and we can't thank her enough as well. She has done so much to help us and has been a cheerleader and also somebody as a mentor. So we're very, very thankful for Dwelling Place, for Jane, and for all the other organizations that have helped mentor us through this. So, and I think that's, and Yarrow and Housing North, really, we can't do this without each other and the volunteers that help all of our organizations. Very, very important.
So
Maria?
Stephanie, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, maybe Jane, if you're there, do you want to just say hi, quickly, and maybe say a sentence or two about Northern Homes, if you're still there?
Hi, yes, I am here. And thank you. It is great to have a network of people to bounce ideas off of and find out, what they're thinking of and planning of for the future. And so I really appreciate, them kind of sharing with me what their plans are, but also being able to, help them out too.
Thanks, Jane. I just wanted to remind everybody too that the coverage of the different areas. So Jane does cover 5 counties in northern Michigan, and 3 of them are in Housing North's territory. So Charlevoix, Emmett, and correct me if I'm wrong, Antrim. Is that right, Jane? The
Yes,
3
that's
counties.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you also cover Sheboygan and what other county?
It's actually 3 others, Sheboygan, Otsego, and Crawford.
Okay, so if anybody is on the call, you know, that is Jane's territory. And I also, Denny, before, because I do want to give David a chance to give some closing remarks, but I did just want to ask each of the panelists, maybe if you could share your thoughts, because this was one of your questions, Denny, I'm going to just steal it, but about the disadvantages of creating maybe a new CLT versus working, you know, with an existing CLT. So I just wondered if maybe you could speak a little bit about that, Stephanie, and then give David a chance to do that. Our next workshop is likely going to be hosting some discussions from community land trusts that were formed through community unit of government partnerships. So I guess I'd be curious, Stephanie, what you think about, you know, forming new CLTs versus collaborating or expanding the existing footprint of CLTs that are in place.
I think the unique challenge that we saw was our income level in our particular community has changed. And so what was here before Mishta is no longer, those packages are no longer available to us. So that's something that has, and yet interesting enough, in other parts of our county, it would be available. So it's really, it can change depending on what zip code you're at, is what we've learned. And so could we have done what we're doing? I don't know. But I think the one thing that I would say is fundraise, and be really good friends with your philanthropy friends, because it's important partnerships as you go forward. And the more that are collaborating, the better off that I think you'll be to help your community long term.
Thanks, Stephanie. David, any parting thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think the partnerships have been super important. And, you know, I think we've done a pretty good job in Michigan sharing ideas, in part because of Housing North and, you know, the collaboration that they're creating through these opportunities in the workshops, and with the state legislation for the CLT property tax relief, we all collaborated on that, and it just brings us together. And you know, I'm excited to hear that Mark McDaniels was involved in Mackinac Island with you all, because, you know, Denny and I have known him for many years, and some people just, you know, come to the rescue to be a part of things. I never would have anticipated that Dwelling Place would have had the opportunity to apply for Spectrum Health funds. I'd never worked with them before, and Dwelling Place is also extremely blessed to be a NeighborWorks affiliate, and they provided direct funding for the CLT that really helped launch the initiative and eventually hire me. And so we need both the small, I guess, grants, the big grants, the small partnerships, the big ones, because I have done a lot of outreach outside of Michigan. In Minneapolis, like I said, we had a grant to study them, and I've been to Portland and to other cities to just compare and contrast. There are really individual needs in each community that are very specific. And you know, we do have another fairly large CLT here in town with one of the other large nonprofits, and we're starting to collaborate more lately, which is really good to see. I think a lot of us get busy, and it's hard to take time and to, you know, to combine forces, I guess, as far as whether to start new ones. I guess I look forward to that next session with the city of Grand Haven, because they decided to do their own CLT and municipal CLT, and I think they're doing really well. And in that case, it may, you know, it probably was a local issue. In South Haven, it's completely different, where they wanted some, you know, Dwelling Place to come and be a part of affordable home ownership. So I think it can be both, but I think each city or each entity needs to make that decision.
Thanks, David. I'm going to make 4 final points, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you to close this out then. One is on the legislative thing. Euro said she was going to put it, send it out to everybody. My understanding is there's been some changes over the last few months in how that's going to maybe look, because Treasury was balking a bit at the legislation to cover. It was essentially going to be a tax credit back to the homeowner, but there may be some changes that would allow it to be the land problem that David mentioned, because land under CLT is taxed on an ad valorem basis, so the homestead exemption benefit to the homeowner is lost, and that there's going to be some tweaking. So if you're really interested, take a close look at what's going on with that legislation. And I think, like I said, there's been some fairly recent developments and changes in the plan for that. The second thing is that was alluded to right at the end here, and that is that municipalities are getting more interested in this and possibly creating their own. I think the good news in all of this, from the work that's being done with the Mackinac Housing Authority, or the Housing Authority Corporation, Mackinac Island Housing Corporation, Dwelling Place, Northern Homes, all these variations, the more people start talking about CLTs, and the more we understand that they're not just one thing, the more likely we're going to see a general sense that this is a really vital and important model for housing development across Michigan. So we should be out there talking about our model is the best model, or their model is the best model, but rather that this variety of models is really going to become, I think, a trendsetter for the whole state. It's the way it is in other states as well. So I'm hopeful, very, very hopeful about that. And the final comment I want to make is that when I started working on community land trust and Dwelling Place, I got a commitment from the board at that time and the CLT board and the staff that Dwelling Place was going to share everything they learned with the rest of the world. And that's still happening today, and I'm really glad to hear that. But if there is information you want to know about rental conversions, or this larger model of using brownfield TIF, the idea was to get this idea out to everywhere in the state where it's possible to use brownfield TIF, and combine that with some philanthropy to make it possible to create those capital subsidies you need to be able to make it possible to work. And to that end, up in northern Michigan, one of the NeighborWorks affiliates, the only NeighborWorks affiliate up there, is the CAP agency there. Chris Brady is on the front end of that conversation, a collaboration with all 8 NeighborWorks affiliates in Michigan, who are working on a collaboration around a number of things, not just CLTs, but CLTs is one of the areas they're looking at collaborating around, and how to use ARPA funds to maybe be a capital subsidy source for expanding CLT use and home repair programs and other things in housing across Michigan. So you may want to talk to Chris about where they are with that, or to Jeremy DeRue at Dwelling Place, the director of Jeremy, Dwelling Place, who's involved in that right now. Then I thank again everybody for participating. I'm having a lot of fun. This is a great thing. It's better than fishing, is to be involved in this kind of work that you know is going to have a positive impact on a lot of people's lives. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this as well. Yarrow?
Well, thank you, Denny. I'm really glad that you enjoy CLT conversations better than fishing, because we're grateful to have you. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody for participating. We will send a follow-up email with copies of the PowerPoints and any links and information. And again, we're here as a resource. Dwelling Place, everybody on this call, is available to help with some of these CLT questions. And we will be having more workshops coming up. So if you haven't signed up on our website to learn about our workshops, please do, and we'll just be in touch. So thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you soon. All
Thanks,
right.
Yarrow.
Thanks everyone.